conflict as the world teetered on the brink of anarchy.
Overwatch. What a little shit you are. When announced in November 2014, the whole gaming landscape rumbled as the hype from your BlizzCon appearance was immense. You had us all at the palm of your hand on release. Things were amazing. What happened? And why am I talking to you as if you aren't a video game? Who knows? But what I do know is I stopped playing you. And I know why. And that's what I'm going to discuss in today's video. So shall we get started? Okay, we shall. Where were you when you first played Overwatch? I was sat with my beautiful wife as we popped this bad boy on download and eagerly awaited the beta that we were about to sample. Like I said, the hype for this game was real. It felt like the multiplayer shooter scene needed a new player in town. And who better than Blizzard? The machine behind the dominating IP World of Warcraft, which at the time was halfway through the patches of their expansion Warlords of Draenor. And while they had seen sunnier days, the wheels most certainly hadn't come off like they did later on. As a company, Blizzard was held in very high regards, which, as a lot of you may already know, definitely isn't the case these days, but more on that later. They seemingly couldn't help but produce magic, with the release of their highly regarded card collecting game Hearthstone being released in March 2014. All signs pointed to Overwatch being no different. As soon as I played the very first game of the beta as Cassidy, formerly known as McCree, again, more later, I knew this was something great. It felt buttery smooth, style was very eye-catching, and it felt extremely new and refreshing. The idea of basic abilities and an ultimate ability in a multiplayer shooter was something new to me, and I was in. Take my money. Well, keep it, I guess. As the game became officially released in May of 2016, it was more of the same. The gameplay still felt fresh and exciting, the community was cooperative, spoiler alert, that changed. The meta was always shifting in logical directions, every class felt different, and it truly felt that rising the competitive ladder was possible as any of the original heroes. I got somewhere in the upper platinum leagues with a mixture of Cassidy and Reaper, while my wife shot to Diamond as Widowmaker in May. It just felt great. And then the cracks started to show. Increasing levels of toxicity within the community started to become unavoidable to the point where, most times, people would set their team chat to be off by default, only to get abuse in the chat about not being part of it. I can attest to this. It was miserable, and unless you found any sort of amusement out of a flame or troll-filled environment, which I don't by the way, then the game began to be less and less appealing to play. As time rolled on, to Blizzard's credit, they did introduce a fix, for lack of a better term. They made it so when you would type certain phrases like GG easy, it would replace what you wrote with a selection from the following lines on screen. While some of those are funny, it did little to mask the problem of people being toxic, actually making no difference to a lot of people as they knew that the person on the other end was still trying to get a rise. You know how a lot of people prefer books to the movie renditions of them? Because your mind can imagine the best version of what you're reading for you. Well, that phenomenon would happen here, and you'd find yourself thinking all kinds of things are being said by the enemy that just wipe the floor with you in game. Once you'd seen all the responses dozens of times, it just got old, and besides, it didn't stop the in-game trolling or throwing. People picking terrible heroes or refusing to come off a hero that objectively isn't working in that particular game. It was extremely frustrating, and it's a problem that still poisons the game to this day. For the record, it is worth mentioning that it isn't obviously only a problem Overwatch faces, and it's the same in any multiplayer because that's just the nature of humans, unfortunately. So the game continued on, with frequent and for the most part quality updates keeping the non-human elements of Overwatch fun. With seasonal events adding some variation with new game modes and cosmetics, Blizzard clearly cared about Overwatch, and it showed to us. The community.
Junkenstein.
They would feature almost short film style pieces on YouTube with a chosen character being focused on. Now, I don't think I have adequate words to pull from my repertoire to let you know how amazing these are and were at the time. I'm not huge into these sorts of things, but man, someone must have been chopping onions near me when I was watching the Bastion video, because my eyeballs were running like the fucking Niagara Falls. This video had those some bitches streaming, let me tell you. Seriously though, go and watch these now. They're still powerful and show us that an Overwatch film could definitely work. This consistent and steady update schedule continued until November 2019 when they announced something new at BlizzCon. Overwatch 2. This sequel was promised to feature a story mode to expand on the slowly building lore up until this point. Remember this, it's kind of a big deal later on. The story was supposed to be an epic tale of the Overwatch heroes versus a robot force that was invading, called the Null Sector. Not the most innovative idea, but definitely fits thematically, and if anyone could make a story work, it's Blizzard. While some continued to play on, most, like myself, had the upcoming sequel to look forward to, so we're happy to take a step back from the hyper-competitiveness that was the main focus for the majority of the player base, mostly due to the entertaining Overwatch League. Now comes the waiting game. In the meantime, however, the lawsuit. On July 20th, 2021, Blizzard was sued by California's Department of Fair Employment and Housing, citing poor working conditions within the company. Many employees cited high levels of gender-based harassment and discrimination towards the women working there, with many allegations of sexual harassment and assault. Over 3,000 employees at Activision Blizzard signed a letter to the company's management for recognition of what the victims were put through. Blizzard had a huge problem on their hands, both internally and from a PR standpoint too. In the midst of all this, 37 employees were fired and 44 disciplined as a response, with hopes of this saving reputation and genuinely improving a seemingly dreadful working environment. One such person to be fired was Jesse McCree, and as a result, to show support and pay respect to employees in the community, the gunslinger's name in-game was officially changed from McCree to Cassidy. Whether this was done for genuine reasons or because they felt they had to act, I'll let you decide, but for many, the whole lawsuit surfacing made it difficult to support a company which would have this running internally for so long. So, fast forward 3 years, 4th of October 2022, Overwatch 2 arrives. Time to finally see if the PvE mode was worth waiting for, so I fire it up, load up the story mode. Only kidding, it didn't release with the story mode. In fact, while the additions of push modes and flashpoint modes were great and all, it was nothing like advertised. Overwatch 1 was merged into Overwatch 2, so you better hope you like all the new additions. Which people didn't. I found myself happy with it. I had friends to play with, and at this point it had been years since I'd played, so it was fun again. The excitement was back, and with the story mode still being worked on, I knew by the time the competitive got stale, I'd have that to sink myself into. Because to be fair, that's a bit more of me. I like me a solo game. So while I waited, I got back on the comp grind. Awful lot of shields in the game now. Feels like you spend 75% of your game trying to break shields. Yikes. Oh well, still fun, I tell myself. Then I noticed that they have removed loot boxes, replaced by a battle pass. Now, I have no issue with the battle pass. What I do have an issue with is that I was now unable to access everything in the game like I could technically do in Overwatch 1. Now I understand, loot boxes can be bad. I also get that Overwatch 1 wasn't free and Overwatch 2 is. But still, it felt like they were phoning in the skins. Most of the skins in Overwatch 1 were creative and looked cool. These, I don't remember liking a single one that I saw. As I kept playing, I felt like I was just waiting and was going off how the game was shifting fast. If I didn't have friends to play with, I would have stopped many months ago. And then, for me, the nail in the coffin happened. Wednesday, 17th of May, 2023. Blizzard's Overwatch 2 development team announced the cancellation of the game's long-awaited PvE hero mode. Jeez. Unfucking believable. The mode that we've been waiting for 3.5 years wasn't coming out anymore, and you can't tell me they didn't know that they were scrapping it long before announcing it. I'm sure they were in development hell for a while and knew announcing it was going to put tons of players off. For me, I was done. I felt so betrayed and felt like they'd left it sitting on the table to keep people playing in hopes of this PvE mode. That's just how I feel. It put such a sour taste in my mouth, I can't even tell you. I was done. The mixture of poor direction that the updates were heading in, new champs ruining the game for the period that they were new in an attempt to drive sales to the battle pass, the endless fucking shields, the gross company practices coming to light, and now the cancellation of what was keeping me playing this whole fucking time. I was done. Now, I hate to break out the Japanese, but I was finito. The whole comp scene could breathe easy again because I was hanging up my mouse and keyboard. It was an end of an era for me as I loved this IP, but I can't get over how it is now. Competitive multiplayer shooters aren't normally my bag, but Overwatch had style and I hope to find one as compelling to me again in the future. Goodbye Overwatch, you little shit.